Uh, we are about to start, and there will be some people who will be joining us online as well. So, welcome joining us. I would like to request Dr. Vanna Prasad and Dr. Reddy to please join on the dice. A big round of applause, please. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir. Now, to take this forward, I would like to invite Mr. Sanjay Kaul for a formal welcome. So, thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, friends, very good evening to you. I am delighted to welcome all of you to the 8th Anita Kaul Memorial Lecture. As in previous years, this is in a hybrid mode, so there are a lot of participants who joined online, and I especially welcome them who have joined remotely. With an excellent chair and speaker, many of you know the chair and the speaker, we can be assured that we'll have an exciting and intellectually stimulating evening. So these Anita Kaul lectures, and this is the 8th in the series, we missed 1 year because of COVID, endeavors to promote conversations around human development and human rights concerns. The emphasis has always been on social inclusion and equity. And Anita was most concerned and worked passionately on these issues for most of her 35 years in government. So in these human development areas, health, nutrition, and education have been the dominating themes for these lectures, and their outcomes, unfortunately, remain poor. Inequities in society have risen in recent times, and marginalized sections, especially children, face multiple deprivations. We are proud of the fact that India is on the verge of becoming the 4th largest economy, but it continues to rank very, very low in children's well-being. India is a low 131st of 180 countries in the WHO UNICEF Flourishing Index for children, and ranks as poor as 117 of 176 countries in the Save the Children Index. So it is in this context that this year's lecture by Dr. Vandana Prasad will help us understand the root causes of why children in India, especially of low-income households, remain so disadvantaged and vulnerable. This unacceptable situation is despite the many gains that we have had in GDP growth. In fact, there is now an emerging and large body of evidence that even GDP growth will be much higher, and our journey to join the Committee of Developing Nations will get accelerated if we begin taking care of our children. We are certainly building highways and airports. This morning, we had the inauguration of the Navi Mumbai International Airport, and these are needed for the economy. But the point that we are trying to make in today's lecture is that we can no longer neglect the health and nutrition of children, who form the basic foundation for any prosperous nation. To those in the childhood, early childhood, especially development space and the child rights space, Vandana Prasad requires no introduction. A community pediatrician and a key founder of the Public Health Resource Network, Vandana Prasad has over 4 decades of grassroots level experience. We are therefore fortunate to have her deliver this year's lecture, but I will leave it to the chair to more fully introduce Vandana ji. I'm sure she will bring fresh insights with a rich experience on and enable us to understand the world of marginalized children in India and more important, show us the way forward towards more effective, inclusive, and people-centered child health and nutrition policy. We are also privileged, especially to have Dr. Srinath Reddy as the chairperson of this year's lecture, arguably one of India's leading public health policy advocate. Dr. Reddy is the founder president of the Public Health Foundation of India, where he is now an honorary distinguished professor. He has several years been a professor at the Harvard School of Public Health and at other international universities. And he currently holds advisory positions as well as committee positions in several national and international bodies. He has a large number of scientific publications to his credit. And as many of you know, Dr. Reddy headed the Department of Cardiology at AIIMS. For his rich and valuable contributions, Dr. Reddy has been awarded the prestigious Padma Bhushan as well. Both Vandana and Dr. Reddy are thought leaders, and extremely more important than thought leaders, they're very engaging speakers. And I've heard both of them. I'm therefore confident, as in previous years, this year's lecture will spark thinking and conversations about the real issues that confront India. In fact, when I spoke to Vandana, I said, we do not want an academic lecture. We want you to engage with us and have conversations. And I'm sure that that is what we can look forward to this evening. I'm personally happy that Mohan, and he can raise his hand, who's remained one of Anita's closest friends, has flown in from Mysore to be with us today. He'll share some memories of Anita. Mohan has been the bulwark of KHPT, the Karnataka Health Promotion Trust, for a large number of years. He's currently the managing trustee and CEO. KHPT, as some of you know, is one of India's leading health sector NGO, and in which I've also been fortunate to serve as a trustee. Mohan was a grassroots literacy activist when first he came across Anita, and thereafter Mohan's and Anita's paths have crossed several times. Today, Mohan, along with his wife Seema, who's also flown in from Mysore, joins us as a close family friend. Mobile Creches has been a key supporter of this lecture series, along with the Rainbow Foundation of India and the Center for Equity Studies. Mobile Creches, as some of you would have noticed, has provided all the background technical and logistic support. And though he could not join us today, I would also like to recognize Harsh Bandhar, who germinated the idea for this lecture series. I especially welcome K.N. Srivastav, Director, ISC, and take this opportunity to thank the ISC for the excellent arrangements, as in previous years they made for this event. I would also particularly like to note the support of Geeta, Anita's sister, and Rohan, who are both with us today, as well as my brother Ranjan and his wife Rekha. I would also like to thank our friends and family members who have been with us all these years. Many of you who've known Anita would remember her not as a Sarkari Babu, but as a very unconventional civil servant. And it would be apt to describe her as a very understated social activist rather than a civil servant. What I found truly remarkable was that within the rather rigid civil servant space that we have been, as civil servants, found ourselves in, Anita was able to find ways to directly reach out to people, reach out to the most marginalized sections of society in almost all her assignments. Along with this lecture series, the Call and Triplana families are also finding other small ways of supporting the causes and organizations that Anita stood for. As an example, we've been supporting homeless and underprivileged children of Rainbow Homes through the Anita Kaul scholarships to enable them to get through their graduation and move into rewarding careers. Thank you once again for joining us this evening. And now I request Dr. Srinath Reddy to take charge of this event. Dr. Reddy.
Thank you very much, sir. As you rightly pointed out, health and nutrition are absolutely pivotal for human development and therefore national development. But quite often, health and nutrition are seen purely through the prism of what is considered to be a biomedical paradigm, but rather than looking at the larger picture of the multiple determinants which drive health and nutrition, both at the individual level and at the population level. The social, economic, environmental, commercial, and political determinants of health are seldom discussed. And I'm glad that this lecture series actually brings that very much to the fore, and today's lecture will be also advancing that discussion. There's no better way of celebrating a remarkable life than to recall her contributions and to help us revisit those contributions and the very many important elements of her life, of late Mrs. Anita Kaul's life. We have her very good friend and colleague, Mr. H.L. Mohan, to come and speak with us. I've been asked to introduce Mr. Mohan. I'm sure he doesn't require any introduction, but nevertheless, he is a social scientist with 3 decades of experience as a senior technical advisor for programs, communications, and community interventions. He is the managing trustee and chief executive officer of KHPT, where he leads and provides overall direction to management of programs, communications, and community mobilization systems and activities. He has played a key role in strengthening KHPT's partnership with both state and national governments in India. Prior to joining KHPT, he spent more than 2 decades in government and non-governmental organizations, working specifically in the areas of education, health, decentralization, and adolescent education. He has worked as an advisor and consultant to several development projects of UNFPA, UNESCO, and UNICEF within the country as well as outside. He has a master's degree in rural and urban community development from the School of Social Work, Mangalore, and has several peer-reviewed publications. But I'm sure it's this rich experiential wisdom that's going to be really reflected in the talk today, rather than whatever academic qualifications might have embellished his initial part of his career.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Respected dignitaries, the dais, and also my friends. I had a very long association and very emotional attachment with Anita Kaul, almost more than 3 decades. So I never spoke about her so far. I wrote something on her, but I never, because it is very, very hard for me to speak. And even today, I'll speak only few of my anecdotal incident, what I want to share it with you, how that is actually made people like me to see the thing in a different perspective altogether. And I don't know what she was for me. She was a mentor. She was a boss sometime. At the same time, she was my friend, my sister, teacher, whatnot. She supported in different ways, in different characters. I remember she, almost in the beginning, I think I'm a student, final year graduate student in Chikmagalur. She was district magistrate of that district. My father also working in a government, and he used to come and talk to us, especially in the dinner. He used to narrate one incident, the decision what they had taken. And she had an excellent colleague who was a superintendent of police, Vipin Gopal Krishna. And both of them, they used to take a lot of decision, because Chikmagalur is always bit of a communally and very sensitive area. One side estate, exploitation, lot of things going on. Another side is a dry belt. So it is a mixed kind of a culture in that particular district. So the journey started there, but as a student, we are not considering that as a very serious things because we never knew we as a student. Then I went to my master's and I finished my master's and come and join for State Resource Center in Mysore. Then I meet again Anita Kaul. I have seen from outside as an administrator, but when in literacy, she is more passionate about doing something. There's a complete change in her. She used to travel the district, like that was the days which we are trying to experiment so many things. Literacy program was launched on experimental basis in different states. So I am part in late 80s when I started that journey. And she used to come and we all worried about the number. And she is the one she used to sit and ask, not only us, even director that time mass education. She used to ask a different questions altogether. Her question on gender, equity, equality, whether women have taken liquor as an issue to fight. Nellore, that time was a big anti-liquor movement was going on. Whether violence against women, intercaste marriages. These are the questions she used to ask, that whether literacy campaign, whether that increased the enrollment of school children in the school. So then we realized the literacy is not just a number game, being illiterate. There's a long thing to understand. So this is how I started associating with her more deeply. And once I remembered, I supposed to pick her. That time she was in Delhi. She was coming to Bangalore. We are traveling together. As a young person who joined the service at that point of a time, I had a two option to attend one workshop in Lucknow for 10 days. At the same time, I had another workshop to attend organized by UNESCO. As usual, I am more interested to go to UNESCO workshop. So I asked Anita Kaul, Madam, this is the option. What do you think where I should go? So she told, you go to Lucknow. I am highly disappointed, but I went to Lucknow, participated in that workshop. I'll tell you, even today, that workshop helps me. It's a more an experiential learning. So she was thinking or suggesting me, because I had an opportunity with her to share not only my job, it's also my personal. Always she used to advise, give. That is how my journey started with her. So the literacy program is in a big movement started happening. Then she moved back to state as a women director, women and child. Then again, I was working in the literacy because literacy was connected with each of every department. She told me that, Mohan, let us go and visit Anganwadis. Yeah, I also went, traveled to North Karnataka. Very interestingly, that Anganwadi worker, the children, 15 children, just they are circle it and they are playing with the ball. And it's so candid that each one not even putting down, okay, they are passing bucks. Then why they are playing like this? So immediate answer for Anganwadi worker, there is a recent circular is passed that if you any breakage in any of the articles, then the Anganwadi worker will be fined. So she told, if children are not going to spoil these toys, who else will spoil? She told, nothing doing, you allow them to play as they want. And she came back and changed the order. That, see, the whole perspective at that point of a time, the very child-centric. So something she want to. Later, I worked with her in DPP, that's a World Bank project. I think a lot of experimentation on Kali Nali program, Nali Kali program. We went to Rishi Valley, learned something, came back, how we can adopt into government school in Karnataka, that it's become one movement. So we are developing a lot of material, so on. I think Shubir Shikla was here last time. And he's the one actually, we are conducting a lot of workshop with the teachers. She wanted to develop teachers as a facilitator rather than just a more hierarchical kind of in a position which actually works with the children. So that was the time we series of workshop to develop material in interior place. So we used to travel together from Bangalore and 3-4 days workshop. And that is a World Bank project. She had a one fancy car called Tata Estate. And she never used to leave anybody behind. That was a great with her. She always used to respect each other. No, let us all go back to Bangalore together. Once in that car, driver didn't agree. Madam, if I put more people into it, that was very, very low charge. It will touch. And immediate answer is that if I can't take my 5-6 teachers in this car, what is the hell I should have this car at all? He told, come on, come in. So 3 cars, we traveled back. This was throughout. Because in the RDPR department, when we started working with the panchayat members, around 80,000 panchayat members, I think Madam as well as Sir going to speak about, she used to work on more on the determinants of health. Especially, I don't think that even today, a civil service or civil society organization can produce film like that. Deepa Dhanraj and we did lot of film on education, lot of film on health and gender. So very interestingly, we had multiple aspects in this program. One incident I still remember, that is in the Raichur village. We are shooting a film. And that was the time there is a lot of debate. We had an RIE college in Mysore, and there are a lot of discussion about caste in education, how the teachers are treated in a village. So many people used to argue against that, but we also shooting film in one of the village in Raichur, and film was in the lunchtime. There was no hotel. We had one a small house where they served lunch for us. And that's such an incident. Few people are given plates, people are given leaves. We never noticed. I never noticed that. Okay. Anita sitting there, she asked, give me leave. Leaf, right? She also took. Then she started. Then we came out. Madam, what, you never experienced in eating leaf? No, no, no. You know who all they gave leaf? You observed? No. So after seeing few of the scheduled caste members who are part of 1-2 teachers were there, and one of the script writer were given that. So then she's a keen observer. And in the Administrative Training Institute, she is the first time to introduce. We used to train IAS probationaries as well as other government officers. She always used to have a mix kind of a thing. The Dalit leader is one of the resource person to speak to them. The SHG women are the resource person. These are the, and so-called Vivek Karyappa, I still remember, is a farmer in almost in the belt of Bandipur. And he used to come and talk about animal and people conflict. So he is one of the resource person. I never seen, because I worked in the SIRD and 85 for the long time, but she brought a different perspective to the organization. So then later, even that institute has converted as one of the recognized institute for the Masuri as well. We developed a lot of material modules with that perspective. Later, our journey is not only with the SIRD and ATI. We 80,000 panchayat members, we had an inauguration. That was a very, very massive program, very keen to do that. And interestingly, that inauguration, that minister who came to inaugurate, and across the state, in all the taluka, block headquarters, women are sitting there. It is one-way video, two-way audio. Minister is sitting there. I was anchoring that program. A woman from Bidar asked a question. Sir, you have a government program that deduction of 10%, it is too much. Can you reduce it? So I also didn't understand immediately. Minister was that, what is that deduction? She thought whatever the cut is an official government cut of the 10%. So then I told minister, sir, this is all. We had a very excellent minister, then he answered that question. That gave us that how the women can actually talk to each other. So that process which we continued for 1.5 years, all these second line leaders were developed as part of that training program. It's an excellent journey. Even for the selecting the resource person, she is very keen. She used to see very simply. 500 resource person we need to appoint for all the blocks. And we are seeing the skill, knowledge, and attitude. I was one lead person to do that. Anita Kaul comes and sits in the back, even during the dinner, lunchtime. She comes, Mohan, this is the person somebody whom we can not see. The attitudinal part is always addressed on that. So I can narrate so many incidents which in my journey with Anita, which happened almost 35 years. And she is not a friend of mine. It's also, she is very, very close to my wife, Seema, and my kids, Kushi and Nishi. And I learned a lot in this entire journey. The last one, I think Ashok Alexander is here. I confused myself when I came to KHPT, when I started working with the sex workers and transgender. I didn't have an answer because I worked with a lot of other community members. I went back to Anita Kaul and I told, Madam, this is something, it is completely different. She told me, Mohan, you go and sit with them. I did 7 workshops across the state, came back, I complete program, I am able to change. Today, 80% of the program in state of Karnataka is implemented by sex workers with government of India support. I credit that to her. Otherwise, I would have been not able to do this kind of a program in the state. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
These are the few incidents. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for profiling a remarkable change maker who combined admirable administrative ability with deep social sensitivity. Now, we move on to the Anita Kaul lecture to be delivered by Dr. Vandana Prasad. Her profile is very much there in the booklet that you have in hand, but it will be a privilege to introduce her nevertheless. She is both a physician in the sense of being a medical graduate, a pediatrician, and a qualified public health academic. But more than that, she has combined remarkable ability not only to practice pediatric medicine, but to also campaign for social change in very many areas of human development, especially in the areas of health and nutrition. Not entirely confined to only pediatrics, but across the board. And I've known her in very many capacities. I'm not going to really talk about much of that, whether it is talking about human rights during the COVID period, or whether it's talking about the need for ensuring that there is exclusive breastfeeding unchallenged by the commercial promotion of breast milk substitutes, or currently campaigning against ultra-processed foods, which are leading causes of child ill health and obesity. She has always been in the forefront. Just to briefly recall her career, she graduated with MBBS, then obtained a MRCP in pediatrics, then subsequently a master's in public health. She is the founder, secretary, and technical advisor for Public Health Resource Society. She is a community pediatrician and a public health professional engaged in health systems and public health for over 30 years. Main experience and expertise have been in the area of health system strengthening and in the area of malnutrition. She has 2 books and several publications on these issues, but actually her span is much wider than what's been really described in her CV. She has been particularly focusing on special vulnerable groups, such as tribal groups, particularly vulnerable tribal groups, persons living on the streets and construction workers. And she has been involved mainly with running and leading programs through community-based organizations, basically civil society organizations and campaigns. She has served also the Government of India as a member, Child Health, in the National Commission for Protection of Child Rights, as a member in various committees with the Health Ministry as well as the Women and Child Ministry, and briefly as advisor on community processes at the National Health Systems Resource Center. She has very importantly participated in drafting the National Food Security Act of 2013 and has been engaged in the demand for better regulation, as I said recently, of ultra-processed foods and technological interventions which actually manipulate food, such as food fortification. She has taught epidemiology and public health nutrition in the MPH course in the Ambedkar University in New Delhi as guest faculty. She is a deputy editor with British Medical Journal Pediatrics Open. About 80% of her work being voluntary, she works closely with several civil society organizations, the Right to Food campaign, and is a founder member of the Jan Swasthya Abhiyan, People's Health Movement. She has continued to practice pediatrics at a primary level, but through a charitable health center run by a CSO. But what I didn't know about her before, which I've learned just now, after having been given a CV, is that she writes poetry, has published 2 poetry compilations, and is keenly interested in music and dance. So truly a Renaissance person. So Vandana, the stage is yours.
Thank you so much. Hello. Yeah, thank you so much. It's very overwhelming to be here, as you can imagine, because I'm in the presence of lots of Diggaj people, lots of people whom I've been working with for just decades and decades, and a room full of people I know who share common concerns that bring us here today. First and foremost, though, I really must thank the Kaul family for inviting me to this occasion, which is a deeply personal one. I mean, this is a labor of love. Let's not mistake it, even though they're so understated. To do something like this here on for a beloved person, to invite all of us into that, to continue the process of grieving and of celebrating her is a deeply personal family thing. So it's really a privilege for me to be here today. I didn't know Anita ji personally, but I really feel that she was a soul sister listening to Mohan ji, because everything that perhaps we are going to be talking about in the next half an hour or so, in some sense, was almost encapsulated in the stories and anecdotes that he has told. We could use those as case studies and develop a whole theory of social change, of social action, whether that pertains to education or health or nutrition or children. It doesn't really matter, because it's essentially that kind of practice and that kind of work that I think all of us in our own ways have been trying to emulate, trying to push forward because we believe that that's the way to make things change. Also, the organizations concerned with the organizing of this particular event, Mobile Crashes, CES, and Rainbow Homes, I thank them, but I'm very much a part of them. They're a part of my working history. I've worked with them forever. I see so many people. I mean, there's so many people here. I cannot name them because then my half an hour would go just naming all of you, how important all of you are to me, and how wonderful it is to actually share this, this little bit of time together. In 45 minutes, one cannot hope to be comprehensive about children in any manner whatsoever. So, I mean, and also there's a lot of pressure upon me because people have been saying that, I speak well, so on and so forth. But my pressure upon myself is that really there's nothing very new to say to any of you. We heard about Anita ji and, her practice and what she was battling. I'm also an IAS Beti, by the way. So, as a child, I grew up knowing what kind of effort goes into being a good, honest, sincere IAS officer. Also what power they wield, how much they can actually change, how much they can make happen, but also that it costs them. It costs them in their life in various ways. I mean, my mother, just for instance, she was superseded twice because she didn't subscribe to something that a minister wanted of her. These things happen, but at the same time, the good work also continued. And, what we kind of imbibed a lot from that period of looking at how people served. They were in the service to serve. And I was also privileged to be part of that in some sense. And now when I hear of Anita ji's work, and also Mohan ji, his own family also came, from something like that, that the power of this person who has been placed in a position where she has authority and she can make things happen, and she does that the right way, is something that's really so important. But before I kind of move on ahead, I just want to spend a little time now in this room full of people who are here because of the common cause for children, concern for children, and intense mindfulness of the context in which children are. Let's just spend a little time, just a few seconds. I mean, if I had a workshop, I would ask you to close your eyes and actually imagine that for the next 5 minutes or so. How amazing children are. I mean, like what children mean to all of us. I don't know when the last time was that you shared time, actually spent time with a child. I mean, when I was writing this is there in your booklets, and I've written this very consciously. Every word here is something that I wrote thinking about this particular half an hour, 45 minutes, thinking about all of you, thinking about children. So I really hope that you'll read it. I'm not going to read it aloud. I tend not to, but I might read a few lines from it here and there. But how amazing children are. So when I started to write all this together, I was in the presence of my 1.5-year-old grandchild. I'm a recent grandmom. And, just, again, I'm a pediatrician. I handle children, but I handle them in the clinic setting. They're coming in for a few minutes. You're chatting to the moms and hopefully chatting to the children as well. And then they go away. But here I'm with my grandchild who's 1.5 years old. And I saw him from the day that he was born. I was present, physically present, to see how amazing they are. When they smile at you that first time and they speak your name, and your whole world just lights up. You can see the way their brain works, the cogs, the wheels in the brain just whirring, whizzing every second, every moment, every hour as they touch, they feel, they taste, and they connect things, and how quickly that happens and how early on in life all that happens. But in the context of a warm, caring environment, that is sufficient, that every child needs and deserves. And that basically is the fact that not every child has it. And so I do want to read, I'm not going to be able to name every vulnerability, every context that we should really be talking about if we're speaking of every child now in today's context, but the basics are the same. And I do want to say that, today I cannot speak without, for instance, hearkening to the 19 children, the babies who were poisoned by a cough syrup. So they were prescribed something they shouldn't have been prescribed, but they were also prescribed something that's poisoned for profit. We're also sitting in a context of Gaza, of Palestine, of at least, informal counts of maybe 20 to 30,000 children who have been murdered, and many, many other thousand who are slowly being murdered. They're being starved to death. Why? Because of some craziness that us adults power-hungry adults across the spectrum, this side or that, have decided is wisdom, is the right way to go. So we're in this context. So we've seen the brilliance and the beautiful and the munificence of children when they have what they need, a warm, caring environment of sufficiency. But yet we are also the ones sitting in this room who have seen the other side of it, no? So we have seen them bereft. We've seen them too sick to save. Too sick meaning just the lack of 300, 400 rupees, the cost of one course of antibiotic killing babies and children. We've seen them thin as skeletons. We've seen them fed junk. We've seen them married off as young as the age of 14. Even today in my own field side, just yesterday, we were looking at the data. I have one 14-year-old who's pregnant, and I have two 15-year-olds who are pregnant. And I have about 5% of all pregnant women who are adolescents. Yet they're not counted. If I look at the data that comes in, they cannot be counted also, because these are the complexities and challenges in front of us. The law says they are not permitted to exist. So they cannot be counted, because if they were to be counted, punitive action would happen. So there are very many complex challenges for us in how to make things happen on behalf of children. So we've seen them married off as young as 14 to be mothers 9 months later. We've also seen them beaten, raped, abandoned, left alone to their own devices, growing up just completely alone without adults and carers around. We've seen them drugged. We've seen them institutionalized. We've seen them sold as slaves. And then you see the shock, betrayal, and finally the apathy of hopelessness in a child's eyes. And I think any of us who've seen that happen, it's not something that we can ever forget. It's a pain and a hurt that at least the people in this room would feel every single day when a child loses hope in front of your eyes, And I think it's our job collectively as an audience sitting here, and as people who are, I know all of you, I know you're all engaged. Also, we are all very old. I mean, like, look at this room. That's something that we have to note and something that we have to think and talk about. We're all gray-haired, like me, myself. And I was just pointing out to people at the back there, a few youngsters there, that this is really what we need to bring forward and to push for is, let us just sense this again, this betrayal that children are facing from all of us continuously. However, it's not that nothing has happened. I mean, like in India, if I look at data and statistics, which is how generally seminars and conferences go, and government always goes. I mean, we're always counting how much we've been able to do. It's not that we've not done anything at all. In our own lifetimes, we've seen a huge amount of change. I mean, 30 years ago, when I walked into a village, and I asked for an Anganwadi, nobody would have even heard of it. Nobody would have even heard of it. And if somebody were to point you to some place, it would be a locked door or a broken door or something. Today, you go to you go to any village, there are Anganwadis there, and they're good. I mean, they're vibrant, they exist, there are people coming, there's something happening there. The point is really, I mean, is it enough? Like, is this enough? Is this how we're going to keep consoling ourselves? This is the 79th year of our independence. Like, how slowly are we? How slowly is it acceptable to us that we will move forward? Because we are certainly moving forward. So just to give you a little bit of, data. So our under 5 mortality, for example, has gone from 48 between 2015 to 28 in 2023. That's almost a half reduction. Neonatal mortality has dropped from 28 to 17 in the same period. These are like 42 and 39% reductions. They're not mean. The percent, and also we've done very much better as compared to the overall South Asian decline. So India has done well. India has done well in terms of survival of children. However, we don't do as well in terms of development. So we have managed to save children, but then what are those children living with is really the question. So the trends in malnutrition are also positive, and people can keep debating and fighting over it. They're positive, but they're really much, much slower. And I would say that malnutrition is not just food at all. People who've been working on malnutrition understand that it's an umbrella. It's a kind of a summary indicator of overall development. It indicates poverty. It indicates gender. It indicates water and sanitation. It indicates care. It indicates education. How many of us realize that the most powerful factor and determinant for malnutrition is actually women's literacy? So So it's not really as much to do with food as it is to do with the overall. It's stunting in particular is a very good overall umbrella metric that tells us the state of the world, the state of our country, and there we've been dramatically slow. So, and I think that some people would have read this other article on the 50 years of ICDS we are celebrating, no, this year. So in terms of stunting, I said in terms of survival, we've done better than other Southeast Asian countries, South Asian countries. But in terms of stunting, we haven't. We haven't done as well as maybe, say, Bhutan, Sri Lanka, Thailand, and Bangladesh, and so many others around us. So there are other pieces of data that are even more shocking. I think the most shocking to me in my current piece of work, and that says so much, is that only 11% of our babies are fed a minimal acceptable diet. Now, what does that mean, That basically means not getting enough decent food. Even today, 11% only are getting decent food. Now, people will argue that how can, 11% means that the middle class is also involved and the rich children would also be involved. Yes, because there are problems happening in all these sections and they're happening differentially and they're different problems. But the net result is the same, that only 11% of our babies are getting decent food to eat. So, I mean, surely something is wrong here, no? And it's dramatically wrong. It's not just a little bit wrong. If you look at anemia, if we have 67% of children under the age of 5, again, this is something that's basically talking about the sufficiency of decent quality food, an absolute basic need for all children we're talking about. So you look at it in terms of anemia, you look at it in terms of wasting, stunting, underweight, you look at it any which way, you look at it in terms of minimum adequate dietary diversity. The story is really quite pathetic. And yet at the same time, what's happening at the other end is childhood obesity is rising like a specter. So there's been a very recent study in Delhi schools, which shows that in private schools, prevalence was 23% in private schools, government schools only 4.5. So, look at the inequity also, like in some sense, the rich, and there is this gap between the rich and the poor in obesity, but also in underweight. So underweight in the same schools was 5 times higher in the government schools as compared to the private schools. But the point that I'm really making is that obesity, even in tribal data, I have the data of 11,000 women, tribal and deep rural women, and even their obesity is rising quite strongly. So what is that to do with? It's to do with the dissemination of junk food, and it's to do with, so junk food is something that's going at it, at our children, not only in the urban scenario, but also in the deep rural and tribal scenario. And where does all that come from? We're permitting it to happen. Now, I'm, as Srinath ji said, that, I'm part of an advocacy group. We're quite forward in asking for warning labels, for instance, on processed foods and ultra-processed foods. But we faced a huge amount of resistance for it in policy, from the FSSAI, from the ministries, of course, from the big food companies. I mean, why would they not? That's their job. They want to make a profit. But government is for the public and government is for public good. So this is something that, that's happening even now. So what I'm trying to say is that we're saving children much faster than we're looking after them. And where it comes to child rights, I mean, this is okay, we talked about survival, not doing too badly in terms of survival, but still a long way to go. I mean, we have state differentials which are massive. So here I'm just talking about national averages, but if you start to compare, say, Kerala with UP or Bihar or Madhya Pradesh, then the state differentials, then it's another different picture altogether. We're talking about 100,000 different types of Indias in the same country. So in juxtaposition to these gaps, what is the resource allocation, which is really what government, how you can track government is you have to track where the money goes, essentially. So what is happening there? Now here also, the data is really telling. So children comprise 40% of our population, right? So you should logically say, okay, they should be getting a fair amount of the percentage of the budget. But the share of allocations for children in the total union expenditures declined from 4.5% in 2014 to 2.3%, 10 years later. So we're seeing declines actually in budgetary allocations to children rather than them going up. And no surprise that 40% of our children, even in this Anganwadi scheme that we're celebrating, and we're saying it's done really well over all these years, relatively speaking, but 40% of our children are still out of Anganwadis, a universal scheme. Why? I mean, why is this the case? Why should 40% of children still be outside of Anganwadis? Our children are still dying from what 2 conditions? This is really dramatic for me as a pediatrician. They're still dying of diarrhea and pneumonia. Diarrhea, why should any child die of diarrhea? Have you ever heard of anybody in our own households dying of diarrhea? Never. A child dies of diarrhea just from dehydration. Why should a child get so dehydrated as to die from diarrhea? The reasons are many, and the reasons are lack of, information, lack of awareness, lack of knowledge, lack of water, safe water and sanitation, also lack of ORS packets, also the lack of time for ASHA and Anganwadi workers to be able to, sort these things out. Pneumonia depends much more on the health system because it really does require most of the time antibiotics, and the supply side issues are much larger. But again, in our households, in the middle class household, which child would ever die of pneumonia? So, I mean, these are absolutely 100% preventable deaths. So when we say survival is good, even that has to be kind of conditional to this kind of an understanding. And the solutions for all this obviously start at the community, because where are the children? They're in the community. And here we depend entirely upon this one ASHA worker and this one Anganwadi worker and helper, who are our community people who are taking every single program and scheme to the community. And it is how many people? It is 40 lakh women. 40 lakh women. Why? Because 14 lakh Anganwadi workers, 14 lakh helpers, 10 lakh ASHAs. And if we count the ANMs and nurses and midday meal workers, then so many more. But just 40 lakh women who are doing all the work for pregnant women, the whole life cycle approach, you're familiar with it. For pregnant women, for lactating women, for young babies, for older children, for adolescents, all this work depends on them. But they're not workers, they're not full-time workers, they're not remunerated, and capacities and so on and so on and so. So, I mean, it's a whole story. The list is endless, and the Rona is also endless. But I want to stop with the bad picture now and really move on to what it is that really can make a difference. So I think the first question that Vinita ji and I were just discussing before we started was, why is it so? Why is it that, I mean, is this new to any of us? No, we've been saying the same things forever. We've been saying them maybe in different ways, but why is it that even today, when we don't seem to be short of money, we certainly don't seem to be short of technology, we don't seem to be short of rhetoric, why is it that our children are not getting what the basic things that they need? I think it's a question that all of us we really need to sit down and ask for ourselves. So, I mean, the questions are, why is it so difficult to change things in favor of children? Is it the lack of science? Is it the lack of evidence? I really don't think so. Yes, we have newer evidence on brain growth and early childhood care and development and so on. We can say we have this new evidence in the last 10 years. And all this evidence, it adds. But when is it that we didn't know that children need decent food, they need decent housing, they need some adults to be there around, they need, water that's safe and potable? Was there ever a time when we didn't know that? So why is it that is it the lack of, if it's a lack of political will, the answer that we generally get is it's a lack of political will. But why is there this lack of political will? I think that's going to take us to the route in which we possibly can make any kind of difference, if at all we can, Otherwise, and if we can't, then we would not be sitting here. We believe we can. Why is there a lack of political will? Why is it that our politicians are not listening to the needs of children? Then we would say, okay, it's a lack of demand, right? Because political will is driven by demand. But then we must ask ourselves, why is there a lack of demand? Is there a lack of demand? I hear this a lot, But is there a lack of demand? I'm telling you, I guarantee it, and I know it myself, because anybody who's sitting there with the people who need things do not feel that there's a lack of demand. There is a demand. But it's not a demand in the same way as you and I appreciate it as a demand. It's not the demand that we want to hear. And it's not the demand that we're ready to take up. It's not the demand that we're ready to support. That's the problem. There is a demand. How can there not be? Like, who do we think would not want to be caring for their children? Definitely there is a demand, but it's different. I think that's the bell that somewhere rang in my brain at some point of time, that there is a demand, but it's not the demand that my brain is conditioned to recognize as the demand. And many people would consider it a wrong demand, in inverted commas. It would be the wrong demand. So please just give me time, because I can just go on and on. These things are so valuable to me, and the fact that I'm sitting here and talking to you is so
please
valuable.
continue.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
So I think, then there are other things that come in, is the status of women. Again, same question. Why is it that women are in the situation that we are in today? There are many answers to this, and culture plays a role, definitely. I think personally, I think religion plays a role, but we may have our own views about it. There are many philosophies and ideologies that play a role in why women are in this situation, because I think that all of us sitting in this room understand that children are never going to be doing well if women are not doing well. Science tells you that, logic tells you that, experience tells you that, various theories tell you that. If women are not doing well, children cannot be doing well, for a biological reason, because it's women who are giving rise to children, for the care reason, and for every other reason. Science tells you, data tells you, there's enough proof of that. So, but why are women in the status that they are in? Is it the vested interest of profiteering from all this? Most definitely so. And I have heard time and time again debates and discussions that completely disregard this fact, that there is a profit to be made from ill health. There is a profit to be made from the poor remaining poor. There might even be some advantage being seen in the fact, let poor children die. I'm not scared to say these things today, that maybe it is that, let the poor die in this country. We keep, people keep raising the concern for population. We have negated this through logic, through argument, through discussion. Population is not the problem. It's distribution that's essentially the problem. We also speak, the same people will speak in terms of the demographic dividend. So how can population be a problem and yet you celebrate a demographic dividend? The two things are contradictory, right? But is it that somewhere in the back of our minds, not us, none of the people sitting here, but is it that somebody's theory of change is that some people are really not citizens of this country, genuinely, because they're not good enough to be citizens of this country, or that they don't contribute? And so therefore their lives are not of equal value. And is that something that any of us believe? And if we don't believe, what are we doing about reinforcing the fact that these people and these children are equal citizens? So deeply, it's a political issue, right? It's all of these together. We do need more science. We do need more evidence. And all of us are working at the same elephant in different ways, no? Some of us are working in a political way. Some of us are working on evidence and science and research. Some of us are working on creating the argument. Some of us are teaching. Some of us are training. We're all doing this. But I think at the heart of it, we have to sit down and ask why things do not change the way we want them to change, and where the politics is and how to budge the politics. I think there are some questions here that do have answers. And I think the whole thing, for me, I'm a practitioner, just as Anita ji was lauded as the fact that she practiced. I'm a practitioner trying to address all these things, try to understand them and seeing what the implications are in work. So some things that, cut through the messy debates and discussions that we all have, I want to share with you. They're also not hard. There are no answers to many of those things. There are complexities, there are challenges, there are ethical dilemmas. And I really want to share them with you, because I know that we've had these individual conversations amongst, and these things are not clear to us. And somewhere we've got to achieve the clarity. But there are some things that cut through clearly even through all of this mess of the debating. What are those things? I think that if we can get our finger on what those things are and what things must remain messy, but having remained messy should not be bringing us to paralysis. That messiness is to bring us to movement and to action. What is that kind of movement? I think there is something that can take us forward, and I just want to put that to you now. The first thing I want to say is, today, if we really want to nurture each child, first of all, what exactly is nurture for us, So it's not just survival, it's all of those things. But if we want to nurture each child, we must at least figure out who are the children who are getting left behind. Why does our data not do that? We constantly keep referring to coverage. So coverage has increased from 60% to 61%. As I said, malnutrition has come down by this and that. Why are we not looking at what is not covered? You might say it's the same thing. You just subtract the percentage from 100, but it's not the same thing. If the people at the top and the leaders are asking for, tell me the people left out rather than tell me the increases in coverage, it's a completely different message that goes down the road, isn't it? In my organization, I insist on it. Don't just keep telling me, oh, we've gone from, 11 to 13. No, that I want to know who's getting left out, because that's where my problem is. And believe me, we are not now in this context of low hanging fruit anymore. All of us actually, we did well at that time because there was so much to be done. There were so many problems and they were so immense. It was much easier to tackle those immense problems than it is now, when the problems are actually located in a very, very in pockets. And those problems are far more complex and low-hanging fruit. You know the whole concept of I mean, like, if you really want to get to the arm that's right at the top of the tree, you have to do so much extra effort. You have to bring a ladder. You have to figure out how to get there and so on. You have to save yourself from falling and breaking your neck. So it's not the same as just reaching out and grabbing the problem that, so now we're at this situation where it's even more difficult for us to manage every single child. So who are the ones who are getting left out? They are obviously the marginalized, the vulnerable. They've been made invisible by a number of factors. Geographical is one of them, social, physical, children with disability, children living in deep forested areas, in tribal, PVTG communities, children on the streets, children in institutions, children living in slums, children in labor, children of migrants, children of sex workers, and so on. So this needs not only a will to look at who's getting left out, but it also needs an intersectional lens, and it needs special effort. So this is the so-called last mile. I mean, we all use this, and we use this a lot, but I have a problem even with that, because the same thing, like you can say, okay, I know the coverage, so I can deduce what's left out, which is different from saying, let me find out who's left out primarily. And similarly, last mile assumes that we're the first mile, and that is the last mile, but I think we have to invert all of that also and make those people the first mile. So our data at this point of time, national, state, district, sub-district, should be tracking not expansions in coverage, but reductions in those left out. That should be our tracking metric. How much are we reducing those who are left out? And that needs focus, it needs intent, and it reflects our, kind of our intention. The second half of the question, should we just do what we've been doing, just more of it, more intensely? And I would say no. I think we need to do some things differently. Those differences are also, by the way, not new, because even Mohanji talked about them and Anita ji practiced them. And like you look at any good theory of change and you're going to come through the same principles of action. But we need to do things differently. Now, so we're talking about basically, when we speak of the special children or the left out children, we're talking about targeting. But remember, the approach has to be a good universal, which we still haven't achieved, a really good universal in that targeting. Some of these are absolutely to transition all the time. Universal work targeting is not the right approach. We've got to have a really good universal, really decent schools in which then children with disability or special needs will need special effort, right? But you can't do one without the other. You can't be targeting if you don't have a good universal. And you can't be achieving the universal unless you also do special things for special people. How can you? You'll never get to the... So it has to be a really good universal. In our creches, that's what we try to achieve, right? So really good standard of, food for all. And then within that, special effort for the specially malnourished and so on and so forth. So targeting within the universal is one kind of core principle that I think is really important. Similarly, so in broad programs, like in public health programs, the value that case-by-case work adds to that. And this is relevant to all our programs. Anemia, for instance, we have broad programs now. We are just putting out more broad programs. But what are we doing to track the specific case? Even today, the woman with hemoglobin of less than 7, which qualifies as severely anemic, is getting the same blanket thing as the one who has hemoglobin of 9 or 10, unfortunately. So case-by-case work alongside good broad programs is really important. And this is not at an individual level necessarily. This focuses on the individual, but it pushes the system. And it also informs the system about what policy and programmatic changes need to be brought in, because you're doing it with a named case, something that everybody in the system can recognize. Specific problem for me to, rather than a general problem at population level of nameless, faceless people. So while we're setting up those good broad programs with good broad principles, we start to do case by case work. I think is very important, and we're not setting that into our programs also. Secondly, systemic change can only happen if we shift away from this current dominance of everything to be happening at individual level. This is something that we have really regressed on. The whole conversation and the whole discourse is about, focus on the individual. So even things like in NCDs, for example, sir, that we speak of, what is it? What is it? Lifestyle, no? Lifestyle changes. Now, in my organization say we're not going to use the term lifestyle changes, because lifestyle changes kind of assumes that people have ultimate choices of what to do. Okay, I can eat a pizza, but I can equally eat green leafy vegetables, no? But most of our people, it's not. Even for the rich, it's not a choice, because that choice itself is conditioned by advertising, by the food products that are available, by food price. So for the poor, even less so of a choice, no? Food prices and advertising, the outreach of companies and so on and so forth. So it's not lifestyle, it is living conditions really that we need to be talking about. So the whole phenomenon of pushing even behavior change communication is a symptom of that we are not speaking of our responsibility to change the system. All responsibility is upon the individuals to change through their behaviors, as though their behaviors are completely in some kind of vacuum, not conditioned by the systems in which we live. The system is not just the government system. The system is also the private systems, the whole economic system within which we are living and within which children are thriving. So I think that moving again back from the individual to not just system, but also I'm going to take it back now in some sense to the community. That in the communities, the same principles apply. They have to be individual-based actions, but they also have to remain very strongly collective action. Something that I think that we have kind of moved away from in our own practices, and definitely something that we have to come back to, because children are not going to advance unless we have collective action at the community level. And in my approach, we've talked about participatory learning and action. That's just one name. It's just one term. But what does it really mean? It really means working with people on their own grounds, thinking of them as rights holders, primarily rights holders, but also knowledge bearers, with respect, with love, with the understanding that we are not the doers. We cannot be the doers. If we in this room remain the doers, this is going to be the status of increase and increment in children, if we remain the doers. And that is much harder to actually get around than we think it is. Even for us as NGOs. And I want to give some examples of that. So this shift to community-based practice, to collective action where the community has primacy, is much easier to understand theoretically than it is to actually practice, because it demands an engagement with limiting structural and systemic socioeconomic factors, cultural and religious differences, and a skill set that's very different from what we think that we need. It's not technical. We need then to be able to demystify technical content. We need to be having the skills for dialogue and negotiation. It also does not fit neatly with the expectations of donors or governments, because you need quick outcomes. You need to crunch numbers. Whereas working with these principles is processual. It takes time. It takes a different kind of effort, and it takes a different kind of timeline, which people don't have anymore. And donor partners are driving this all the time, give us numbers, give us numbers. Sarkar wants numbers. Are you doing something 2 years? What have you achieved? But so it's not processual. So it's not what we are talking about is not a magic bullet. It quarrels frequently and inconveniently also with our own notions of expertise and rightness. I mean, I can tell you that in my work with tribal women, very often I'm very, very uncomfortable with what I'm seeing and what I'm dealing with. I can see that they're so very different from me. And somehow, but we have to come together, right? What does that mean? That means that there has to be some kind of compromise, some kind of negotiation. But how do I fit that in with my notion of standards? How do I fit it in? These are the complex challenges, ethical dilemmas. Do I set a differential standard for if you're rich, you get a better standard, and if you're poor, you get a different standards simply because it cannot be done, it's not practical, and so on and so forth? Or do I retain the same standard, but I can never achieve it on the ground? Today, in the ECC policy, for example, the standards that we have set, they do not apply to practically any Anganwadi today. So what is the answer for that? Now, it sounds very complex. It sounds like there is no answer, because if you do it the way that's practical, it goes against your notions of equality. Okay, you're saying, somebody can make do with lesser standards. But at the same time, you've set the same standard, it doesn't get achieved. I think there is an answer here. The answer is that the answer is not for us to give, really. And there can be no one right answer. The answer is in the process. So the process of shifting decision-making to the community. For us to be advisors, to say, this may be the right thing to be done today, but tomorrow we might need to be shifting elsewhere, or maybe there's a better option even today. So for us to be making inputs and so on and so forth, but unless it cannot be, this responsibility of this decision cannot be upon us and always upon us. This thing of knowing, also of identifying with the child in our own programs. If we identify with the child more than through the route of the parents, again, we're doing that child a disservice, and we're doing child rights a disservice. I don't know if I'm making myself clear. If we take it more upon ourselves, that we are the upholders of this child and this child's rights, and we know best, because obviously we do know a lot more technically about what is to be eaten and what is to be practiced and what is to be done, and the parents are different from that thought, then it is upon me to make this happen to this child, irrespective of what the parents think or don't think. But that cannot be the sustainable approach, unfortunately for us. However much that may hurt us, that is not the way our children are going to, and this society is actually going to move forward. That's not the way that the demand will be generated. That's not the way where the sustainable action will come up. That's not the way where the political will come up. And even today, with all this, even our own top-downedness in this manner, in this matter, have we achieved this rapidness of growth? Have we actually made it happen to all children? We haven't. So I think this is something that requires much deeper thought for us, that what is the practice? And for me, the solace is, in this paradox and this ethical dilemma, the solace is to say, it's not me who's going to decide for this family. I'm going to try and do my best to create the best set of circumstances and resources so that the decision can go as far as it's possible, as I know it's possible to go. But today, standard, and let's not, let's also not fool ourselves. Standards are not the same across the whole world. People make standards out of choices. And those choices are guided by our contexts. Now, which context is deciding our choices, right? Is it the context of the slum? Is it the context of the tribal community? Or is it some other technical context, which maybe UNICEF or WHO or even all of us as people who are trained and who are experienced and educated are making? And is there something that needs to be done differently? Would things happen differently if the people we are talking about were at the decision-making table? And I'm pretty sure they would. So I think that's really what I'm driving at. So the metrics that we would be measuring our own programs by would be very different. So therefore, they would be processual metrics, not the direct outcomes metrics. They would be processes of how much power has been shifted to communities. Much harder to track also. Do we even have the right indicators? We really don't in our programs, no? So I would really measure, if I think that my children are not going to achieve this level of sufficiency by doing it this way, I must do it through a different process, which is basically a process of shifting power, because the heart of the whole thing is power and power differentials. Then what are my metrics to measure this shift in power? And am I able to use them in my programs? And by the way, data is like something that's extremely beautiful and really very valuable to me. We have created some very innovative MISs, which even the state government of Odisha has also adopted it, though it's not been put in use at all, the e-Kalika. So data and metrics is very important. And in our practice, in fact, communities really value data. They understand data, but do we bother to share them? No, when we're not doing that, we just assume that they will not understand data. Community also understands data. They can make decisions based on data, but we're not engaging them in that way. So we have used growth charts, for example, very effectively with women, completely illiterate women. And they understand growth charts much better than perhaps sometimes even Anganwadi workers. And they understand what is needed for their child via the growth charts and data, the data of the growth charts. So they can also use data, but data must intend to tell the truth. And also what data is it that we're gathering is, going to be critically important. So 2-3 things that I've said, like, I think that the rights-based approach cuts across this need for evidence for everything, because I said that there are certain things that you don't need evidence for. They're basic rights, they're basic needs, and they have been established as basic rights forever. So why do we need to keep, collecting evidence and showing evidence for them? It should override evidence. Basic rights should override evidence. I think the second thing that we're saying is that the process is critical. The process of engaging communities as decision makers, as power holders, but we know they are not. And it's our job to shift that, to somehow make that happen in our own practice, so that more and more they can be the ones who are taking decisions. That also gives us a way out of these ethical and philosophical dilemmas that we hold in terms of technicalities, standards, and so on and so forth. So essentially what I'm saying is, without a participatory, process-driven strategy, it is my firm conviction that we neither do justice to our vision nor achieve our mission. It is up to us as a community of people intensely concerned for children to, in some sense, moderate our ownership of this agenda and allow it to be driven by the families concerned with all the challenges that come along. Up to us not to lead, but to support and guide where necessary. This is not quite the same as being required to be a tabula rasa. We are not. We come with some gifts, and so does the community. We share them at the table to create a feast for our children together. In doing so, we learn, everyone learns, the task gains momentum and strength through a true shift of power. And then that needs to be systematized through a combination of a top-down and a bottoms-up approach to truly reach every child. So again, it's also an and, it's not an or. The bottoms-up doesn't mean there doesn't have to be a top-down. So the universal doesn't mean there doesn't have to be targeting. The targeting doesn't mean there doesn't have to be a universal. The bottoms-up doesn't mean that there's no need for a top-down. As long as there is a power differential, as long as there is class, as long as there is government, we do need the top-down work to happen as well. But we need the bottoms-up. Otherwise, it's going to remain the same. 10 years down the line also, some Vandana Prasad will be sitting here and we'll be talking about the changes of 1 to 2% and 3 to 4%. Now, there are many examples. I think I'm going to skip them, but we have, these debates have happened around, for example, ready-to-use therapeutic food. What should be done? Should it be a packaged ready-to-use therapeutic food, some community-based product? We've used the same debates for fortified rice rather than enabling the community to eat more diverse diets. We've used the same arguments for, should it be a pediatrician-dependent counseling for breastfeeding? Because even health worker counseling is not achieving it, is not good enough. Should we engage formally trained teachers as creche workers? Or can we depend upon village women to look after our children with some degree of technical rigor? I mean, in my experience, we can. Should we bring in parallel services because it takes too long to push governments to perform? Many donors have done this with us. It takes too long to work with governments, and it's too difficult. Let's give up that game and let's work directly. Then they do that for 10 years and come to the same conclusions that we're still not achieving a lot. So what would this shift of approach look like specifically if it were applied to ongoing schemes and programs? The nature of capacity building would change. No, the training would change. The curriculum would change. The process of training would change. Even today, it's very lecture driven. Even I'm standing here. I really would love to have been sitting here in a circle and talking to all of you. So the nature of capacity building of all involved personnel, and all involved personnel is not only our frontline workers, it's our middle level, senior level, everybody, that involvement. And it would adhere to participatory principles and methods instead of going in for key messages type trainings. We would make better use of our cadres. I like to give the example of the Anganwadi helper as a cadre that's been neglected, thoroughly neglected, as a potential childcare worker who can do everything that, a good childcare worker should be doing. Why we neglect? They're not just ayas or whatever, just to clean and just to cut some vegetables and all that. Many of them are actually handling full-fledged Anganwadis completely alone. We know that in our practice, right? The Anganwadi workers upping and downing and the Anganwadi helper is the one who's doing that. So this is a cadre that we would use much better. We would use all our frontline cadres much better, recognize us as workers, give them decent remuneration, give them full-time work, because there is full-time work to be done. We would work through the PRIs. Anita ji believed in that firmly, and Mohan ji also referred to it. We would have flexibility in our programs. I mean, like Anganwadis, why are they serving menus that are fixed by people sitting in Delhi and so on and so forth? The menu should have been flexible. The timing should have been flexible. We've been saying this since Kingdom Come. We would work with our older children and adolescents in a very different way, as agents of change in our community. Again, not in an instrumental sense, the same way as we behaved with women and SHGs. I mean, we have to work with women again as agents of change for their own selves primarily, then with their children. And similarly with adolescents, we would do that. And we would make sure that the people who are affected by the problem that we are tackling, which need not necessarily be the problem that we think is the primary problem, their primary problem is the one that's given primacy. Like if you do a needs assessment, that need, the one that's taken up first, should be the common need between them and what you're also carrying. The agenda cannot be fixed in advance, no? It should be that common need, because that's where you'll get the maximum impetus. It's their need also, it's also your need. It's also probably your donor partner's need. That's the one that would move fastest. It would affect the kind of metrics and MIS that we deploy. It would enable the right to information rather than curtail it. It would mobilize people to claim their entitlements and push the systems. It would ensure dignity. I'm speaking in the specific context of this facial recognition and this Aadhaar thing. I mean, we have seen the videos and we've seen it in the ground. It's so sad that our community has to first prove that they are there, they are alive, they're citizens. I mean, just the fact, even in our health systems, just the fact that somebody is coming to an Anganwadi, who would go? Would our children be going? No, they're going there. There are people who've lived there for 15 years because now their face is not being recognized, time and time again. I can quote you data and statistics. I don't want to bore you with all that, but there are numbers to share how many are not getting their just entitlements just because of facial recognition and so on. So there are things that we can do differently and better. We ourselves need to make those changes in our own programs. We need to push for this in public programs. And I don't know if I still have time to show some photographs because I just quickly wanted to do it. So I don't want to leave you like in any kind of feeling of despondency. I just want to share some photographs with you because they're beautiful photographs of the context that we've been talking about, of the women and children we've been talking about. So quickly, just to take you through. So yeah, just look at the beauty of. So this is one village scene. I can't actually see the photographs very much myself. I don't know if I can go there and see them. So look at this woman. Just go back to the previous one. So she's carrying a murgu, and there's some musicians in the background. I don't know if the photograph is here. So there are some people who play music. There's some children hanging around, and this is also where we are at. And the next thing, she's taking a child to the creche. So thank you. Next photograph. Yeah, there she is. This beautiful woman with this beautiful baby taking her child to a creche. Yeah, next. And some men as well. I mean, like, I think that I would fault my programs and our own organizations for not working enough with men. There are many, many different groups in the country who are primarily now working with men also on childcare issues. And that's again in a creche scenario, a child being brought to the creche. Next, please. This is, a woman sitting with many. And I put this photograph in simply because look at all the children. Look at this one, just lying around there. Look at her thoughtfulness. Look at that older child interacting with this younger one. This is just to bring us back to the joy of the people that we are here for. Next. Yeah, food plays a very important role in all our programs. And, I think that there's still a great need for food. There's still a great respect for food. There's still a great desire for food. And food carries us through a lot of our programs very efficiently, I think. Next, please. Look at the joy on this girl. This is a very iconic photograph of one of our creche workers. She's handling, there are 3 in the front, and I think there is one at the back also. You can just barely see her head over there. She's looking after 4 babies there. I don't know. I mean, what I was trying to say was in terms of, okay, somebody with a safety audit would come and say, is this necessarily safe and so on and so forth. And it's true. I mean, like all these things are true together. How do you make sense out of all of this? No? But this is the best that we have at this moment of time. And she's doing a great job, and our job is really to support her as well as we can. So anyway, this is one creche worker that we had. All these photographs are with permission. This is just one community meeting. I know a lot of us have been party to such and several such community meetings, just under a tree, just all of us together. Next, please. These are the PLA meetings, and I really wanted to show you these because just look at the materials that we use. They're all AV materials. There's a lot of song, dance, drama, the stories, lots of stories that are made together. So the stories are stories that really resonate with people. There's stories like Mohanji's stories about Anita ji. There's stories about Raku's story, which has been iconic in the health sector for us to understand so many things. So there's stories like that. You see, there's a child there engaging in all of these meetings. There are children around. They're engaging. There's some food lying around. This is obviously a meeting on dietary diversity. Next, please. We explain a lot of technical things to our women, and mostly where I work, 80% of women are still not literate women. And so here's a growth chart that's being discussed in one of these meetings together. And unfortunately, we're in a context where growth charts are almost on their way out. In fact, they are gone. Portion tracker doesn't quite cut it. It doesn't give you the same information that you really need. It does not replace a growth chart, but unfortunately, we're throwing out all these physical means that people can actually engage with. They can see, they can feel. We've used large flex charts, growth charts that are the size of maybe twice the size of this table, and you just place them in the community and people engage with that, and it makes a great tool to explain malnutrition, to explain child growth, to explain where a particular child, how well they've done. When a woman moves her own baby from a red line and she carries him all the way up to a yellow line like that, and she can feel it. She can feel my child has progressed and proceeded. How does a portion tracker do that? And also the data that we capture in a portion tracker. Anyway, long story. Next, so these are two different types of creches. You can see the beauty of this creche. Now, this is obviously, if people feel it's their own. I mean, we had to quarrel with donors who said, why are you allowing women to come into the creche? The creche should be an 8-hour center where, we have a program, and it's disturbing. And it's also possibly not very hygienic. Why are you allowing women to come here to fight? And so, no, it's theirs. It's their program, and they will come. Like if I were taking my child to a creche as a rich person or a middle-class person, and I wanted to take my child back home, can anybody say no to that? No, I'm paying. No, I'm a paying person. I have the right to take my child home when I want to take my child home. No, but then, and correctly so, but then how will the child feed, and then how will we achieve our outcomes of nutrition? So it is a challenge. I'm not saying that, it's this one was right or this one was wrong, but both things have to be made to coexist. Next, please. Yeah, this is women with their children proudly sitting and standing in front of this creche. Next, please. A very thin child eating, women feeding their children here, toys, and another man over there. Yeah, next, please. More of the same, really, but a kitchen garden. Yeah, something really important that happens alongside. I mean, we are moving into more and more comprehensive work. So it's kitchen gardens also, it's nutrition sensitive agriculture also, it's livelihoods also. It's really whatever it is that one can do in that area. Next, please. Similar, but look at the food and children eating, and anda. Anda is very important to us in our work. Next, please. Toys. We try to use local toys, but we also use plastic toys. Again, there's kind of a negotiation between what is possible and what is practical. Next, please. Growth monitoring is used very, very effectively, and it's very important in our program. So we use it a lot. I don't say I'm blocking you most of the time. Next, please. Yeah, these are ways of, just go back. So this is a chart that basically tells us the trajectory of a child in terms of trends, and every child is there, and that child's trajectory can be seen by any woman or community member or PRI member, anybody who can come across over there. Next, please. Immunization happening. Next, please. Just children standing in line towards the ham. It's amazing. It's just amazing. They're all children under 3. They will all walk in a line, like they're making a train, and they go and they wash their hands together. Next, please. And they also sleep together. I mean, my grandchild goes to a creche already. He started going to the creche at the age of yeah, 6 months. And he may fuss a lot at home on food and everything, but in the creche, they just sit together and eat. They sleep together like that. And I'm not pushing for children under the age of 2 to go to creches. But if there's a need, then they have to go. Then it should be a good place to go to. Next, please. And this is one of the programs that Odisha government actually took on and took up. So this is a open program that in the few cases that we managed to get it scaled up through a state government. So the state of Odisha, even today, the tribal department is running 62 creches in 62 villages. They closed down at one point of time for various reasons, and they had to be reopened in 1 week because the community insisted. The community petitioned, they went to their BDOs, they went to the DM, they wrote letters and put their anguthas on it. We went to the press and media. We made quite a fuss. And in 1 week, they had to be, children came and sat at the door. We had photographs of children sitting on this closed door, locked door, saying like, where's my creche? Where's my food? Within 1 week, 62 villages, creches reopened. But this is the only thing. Mobile creches has done a great job in Haryana for at least getting state governments to move ahead on creches. So this is something that we're really proud of. Next, please. This is working with young people in another program that was again a statewide program in Jharkhand, which is Tejashwini program with adolescents. And these were these youth clubs. So this was obviously in the time of COVID. World Bank led program done through the government of Jharkhand, where we were the resource group for health and nutrition. Next, please. So they worked on dietary diversity themselves. They had their portion vatikas and things like that. Next, please. Sports was a big thing for us in our work with the young people. And you can see how beautiful these women are on their cycles. Next, please. Also children, huh? This is just, a really nice photograph of SHGs from one block who they heard about anemia. We talked about anemia, we discussed anemia. There was a whole menu of things that could be done. They decided iron kadhai is what we want to do. And they all went and bought iron kadhais. So look at them in scores. I mean, iron kadhais disappeared from the village hearts because they were all going and buying iron kadhais. Next, please. And then they took their photographs. And finally, I think that we do need to fight. And all of us should really engage in campaigns, in social action, move out a bit more, move out onto the streets about a bit more and shout a bit more. Maybe not all of us sitting in the front half of the room, but some of us sitting in the back half of the room, the younger people. I think there is no way out of protesting, of fighting, of demanding, of sometimes screaming and shouting, because it shifts the environment towards, in a way in which the rest of us who may be working in more technical ways and so on can actually make this change happen. We're all on the same side, but we have to work differently and all together to make it happen. So this is the Children's Right to Food Convention in Bhopal in 2012. And the next slide is of even a much older, so you can see I have black hair. This is in, I think this is in South Africa at a People's Health Movement Convention. So you can see other familiar faces. There's Sundaraman somewhere in the back, and there's me. And see the slogan. This is a slogan that we used in forces, and we created this in Children's Right to Food, which is "Bachcho ki chuk chuk gaadi, chalkar pahunchi aanganwadi." So I'm going to just finish with a few lines because since I have declared and outed myself as a poet, so from one of my own poems, this poem is the lines are about a child, so that's why I want to end with that. The poem is called A Chronicle of Our Silence, and it's basically talking about a period, an era where there's a massive, dull and dark thing that's descending upon society. And it keeps coming closer and closer and closer. And the adults keep pretending it's not there, keep averting their eyes, keep trying to maintain a routine as far as possible till that routine dwindles more and more. And it slowly advances and advances slowly but surely. And then the last stanza is, then I'm told a child picks up a stone and a dog snarls by its side. A deep growl that breaks the tangled web of averted eyes. But that, compatriots, is not my story, but theirs. Thank you. I don't know if I spoke any sense because I was just so overjoyed and overwhelmed by the fact that we're all here together today. And I would love if we have time for questions and answers.
Thank you very much for that stirring call to conscience and for collective community-led action. Mr. Kaul had generously allotted 15 minutes for me to make my comments, but I shall not do that. I think I'll be very brief in my comments, but let the questions flow from the audience so that Vandana will have an opportunity to answer, and perhaps then I could close with some comments of my own. But there have been several important points that have been made by Vandana in this particular lecture. One, of course, is that targeting is not going to be particularly helpful, but targeting is needed even in a program which is totally universal. So equity has two dimensions. One is the horizontal dimension where everybody is covered with the services that are needed and promised, but you also need a vertical dimension with additional focus or additional resources or additional services for the people who have had severe health equity gaps and who might not be able to benefit even from the services that are provided unless those gaps are bridged. I think that's a very important point that's been made. The second is she has talked about the profit motive, and particularly in the context of ultra-processed foods that she mentioned, but many other areas of profit motive, even in the case of the milk foods, breast milk substitutes, we know that there's been a major issue. But particularly when we're talking about childhood obesity and malnutrition in many forms, we see that these are advertised addictions resulting in marketed maladies. And that's a terrible pity. That is not being controlled. Then she brought about very clearly the importance of the community. Quite often, community has received lip service, quite often ignored even in the WHO's 6 different pillars of health system. But community is absolutely pivotal and central, not merely as a beneficiary, not even just as a support for community-based monitoring, but throughout the process of identifying prioritized needs, of ensuring their own active participation in the design, delivery, monitoring, and evaluation of programs. I think everywhere the community becomes absolutely central, and that is something that needs to be brought back into all policy and planning, and that has been one of the Achilles heels of most of the programs that we have had. Then we have and the kind of experiential wisdom and the tacit knowledge that the community has not been adequately tapped, and that needs to be done. Then the other question, of course, is why are we actually attributing it only to political failure or administrative failure, which of course are absolutely important elements to identify and correct. But on one hand, we talk about the parents not being able to provide the right kind of food and right kind of services. But then we, of course, blame the political failure and the administrative failure. But as she said, when she talked about the cloud, dark cloud descending, it's actually a civilizational failure. When you have very preventable health and nutrition not being provided, resulting in ill health and malnutrition, then that's a collective civilization failure, because as a society, we have a collective custodial responsibility for our children. It's not just the parents. As a society, we have a collective custodial responsibility, and if we abdicate that, then it's a civilizational failure. Then, of course, ultimately, I believe what she's calling for and what we must all call for is people-partnered public health and community-connected clinical care. And only when we can bring that into our health system as well as into other sectors that are very much linked to health, then can we actually try and correct the situation. Now we open up for the questions, comments. Yes, sir.
Good evening. We celebrate a wonderful person, Anita Kaul, and a very effective bureaucrat who delivered. Vandanaji, thank you so much for this wonderful, great information, what we need to do. But I have a couple of problems. I'm not asking you questions, comments, if I'm allowed to make. Vandanaji, your basic conclusion was that there was a lack of political will. I don't agree with this. I'm a politician. Okay. I don't agree with this. How many district collectors today visited Angalwadi? Okay, for making a report, you go once a week, once a year. How many district collectors religiously visit Anganwadis, care about what is happening there, have a dialogue with the workers there? What percentage, madam? 0.1%. So when you blame the political system, it's very good for bureaucracy and for the media to say it's a lack of political system. The wonderful work happening down there. What happens to the middle level today? This week we read about 17 children dead because somebody failed to find out that this doctor was prescribing cough medicines which were poisonous. Where was the bureaucracy? Where was the district collector? Where was the health inspector? Did the Prime Minister prevent? Did the Health Minister prevent? Sorry, more than political failure, it's a failure of the bureaucracy, number one. Number two, you talked about how do we change community habits. Madam, take for example, we respect community food habits. India, largest number of people are vegetarians. If only a child had 3 eggs a week, I think most of the health problems of this country will be over. Are we talking about it? Is any bureaucrat talking about it? What is happening? And it doesn't require, you talked about the diminishing budget allocations. Is the money reaching out there? What money is being spent? You take your CGHS health medicines which are given. I am a beneficiary of the CGHS. Doctor, what percentage of actual medicine which we get in our country is actually fake and what percentage is genuine? Is it lack of political will? It's lack of bureaucratic, efficient administration. We need to change all these things. We got to. I think this is where.
Thank you very much, sir. I think
Yeah.
you made your point.
Thank
It's
you.
very contestable, though. So I think we'll leave it.
No,
to
no,
Vandana
please
to
contest.
No, we will.
Yeah.
We will.
I spent 45 years in the IAS as an MLA, as an MP, as a union minister.
So I will leave it to Vandana to answer, but I'll also answer later on. I think it's a collective failure, not just a bureaucratic failure, but why is it also a political failure? We'll explain. Go ahead.
No, I mean, I think it's all of us together. No, I don't think that, at least I didn't intend in my conversation to say it's political will and not nobody else is at fault. In fact, I brought myself into it as a culprit. I brought the NGO sector in. I spoke of the system and I said, but the system is not just the system of government, it's also the private sector. So I don't think it's, I mean, I don't think I left out the bureaucracy at any point. And I take your point. I mean, I agree. But at the same time, I think that historically, the relationship between political masters and the bureaucracy has shifted also, sir. And I think that that is something that we also have to acknowledge and see. I mean, I also said that I'm the daughter of an IS officer. My mother was a 1960 batch Rajasthan cadre officer. So I think that, and I've also recently been within the ministry in a certain capacity and seen it from the inside. So there are limitations that I'm not a bureaucrat, I can't speak for them, but there are limitations that the bureaucracy brings up, and they might point to their political masters. The political masters might point to the bureaucrats. I don't think it's particularly helpful for us to say it's either this or that. I think that we should all in our own positions look at our own selves and acknowledge it's us, we're part of the problem. I think the NGO sector is also part of the problem. I not only hinted at that, I actually spoke of it in fair amount of detail. So I'm not leaving the bureaucrats out at all, sir. I don't at all intend to, but nor am I leaving out the political masters. They are far more powerful than many of the bureaucrats today. And also dictate terms quite a lot. I'm sure there are many bureaucrats sitting in this hall. This is a conversation we can take, outside the hall, because there's no end to this. Is it them or is it them? And we're always pointing our fingers. वो तो बोलते हैं ना, कहावत है कि भाई एक उंगली उधर तो चार अपने पे. तो I think हम सभी हैं इसमें, हम सभी इस दुनिया में शामिल हो रहे हैं, हम सभी इसमें भागी हैं. In fact, we are only becoming better off. I mean, I am becoming better off. I've spent my life doing pro bono work, but I'm still getting better off by dint of my inheritance. By dint of, for 3 generations, having food security and having people who worked in professions. I don't have to do anything to become richer and richer. Whereas what's happening to other parts, so we are all party to the, as I think Sir was absolutely correct in summarizing, to say it's a civilizational failure, a societal failure. And the only way this will work is if we speak up for what is right and what is wrong and wherever we are. And I think bureaucracy is failing to do that today, a little bit. In fact, that would be my larger concern, that bureaucracy is perhaps failing to speak up as much as it might. I think they're under a lot of pressure also. Rather than not being efficient. Efficiency is not so much my concern just now for this dark cloud that's descending upon us, but we can, I don't disagree with you.
Just to sort of add to what you said, it's a collective failure, but I don't think we can say that there have been no political problems in terms of failures. The instance that you quoted, sir, of fake medicines being given or poisonous medicines being given, you had only 3 qualified staff members in the central drug regulatory system. That's been corrected now over a period of time. But the state drug regulators are extraordinarily weak. And if a particular drug is approved in a state, it can be circulated and sold anywhere in India. Now, not correcting these weak regulatory systems amounts to a political failure. The bureaucrats also are certainly part and parcel of the administrative system. But if you do not have a proper regulatory system and neglect it, and do not have a coordination between states and center, then you can have a fake drug produced in state X or Y and be distributed all over the country. And even if that other state has a reasonably good drug regulatory system, it cannot protect its people till some mishaps come to light. And that, I believe, is a political failure, both of not having properly financed the regulatory systems and of not having ensured proper center-state coordination. Right. Yes, sir.
I think we agree with him. The politician has to go back to the people every 5 years. The bureaucrat goes on and on, and at the age of 23, 24, he becomes an IAS officer. And thereafter, there's nobody to remove him. He never gets removed virtually. This gentleman here has to go to the people every 5 years. And that we have to accept. So therefore, he is naturally more accountable than the bureaucracy. That is the thing. But the bureaucracy, I must clarify this, wields immense power because it has its legacy coming from British times. It was under Jawaharlal Nehru who said there should be no civil service. Everybody should come from the bottom. We must think about this. Otherwise, it is the real power is wielded by the bureaucracy. My friend Sanjay Kaul notwithstanding.
Well, sir, I think we have sort of explored this topic, and I think, as Vandana said, it's a collective failure. We need to improve all cogs in the machinery. But let's go to some other facet of the discussion. Please, the gentleman at the back.
Yes, sir. Good evening. Myself, Dharma Rao. I am the team of Mohan sir and with my project director. So I am working as a national consultant for the tuberculosis and nutrition. So yes. Thank you, Sanjay. Me? Yes. So, sir, very interesting discussion is happening, but yeah, I just say I saw discussion with Alfred sir and others also. So when we are discussing Vandana madam, I can see Seema is here from BHI. Yes. So, sir, these are all the self realization and self decision at the individual level and certain capacity. As I can, when I was reading the Anita Kaul madams, I go back to my childhood, that TLM. We are going to get a slate, kerosene from that. And in that evening, we are teaching to the other people. That time, we are very young. So we are teaching that. That TLM to right to education. It's a great change. Yeah. It's a great change. Of course, all the things, but I have the witness. I collected the kerosene, I collected the chalk piece, I collected the slate. So that is the something is happening. But as I say, Mohan sir will be agree and my PD will be agree here. With certain capacity, a person also can change certain things with the same things. What we did in 6 months is remarkable. What we did in 15 days, that is another milestone. We have not done anything. Same bureaucracy, same people, anything. The support, guidance, and the person's involvement. Now I can say, Bandana madam, I come from Orissa. You working in Raigada and you are working in Malkanagiri. State capital to reach that place is 700 kilometers by road. Okay. So she's struggling a lot. How can you push that e-Kali or whatever the digital platform says in that? If it is not feasible, not workable in Orissa, can you do to another 35 states and UTs? There are children's. We don't have a network there. We have. Can you do something on that? Can you expand it that? So similarly, taking the note of this memorial lecture, madam, I support, as I say, I support the project. We deal with the 25 lakh TB patient. Out of that, 10,000 children's. These lectures give me, can I focus 10,000 children's? Can I give a portion to them? Can I give a better treatment to their family members? That is a universe of 40,000, where 25 lakhs and 40,000. As you said, madam, last milestone. So I just want to request, as Alphonse sir, I agree, the bulldozer man in the Delhi. So he has taken some initiative. He did it. It is a example for us. Similarly, we can do with our own capacity. That is, I am telling. We should not now in this age, we should not claim bureaucracy. We should, as a my little knowledge. So at least what we can do with our own capacity. Thank you very much.
Somebody with a hand.
Good evening. I was hearing about what all things have not been done. I agree with you because I worked with this area for nearly 35 years now. And I find that you've given a lot of examples of things not being done properly at so many levels and who all are responsible for not doing that. But I would also request you to, somehow give it to us some example, some successful example, which you think can be sustainable in bringing in a change. Because even a minute and micro level example would be an ocean in a drop. Because we have always been struggling, sustainability is not there. We do a thing, we go to the field, we change a thing, then we come back after a few days, I found the same situation existing. So something that worked, and you think that can work in future, if you just give a lead to people so that they can progress in that direction. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the point that I actually was trying to make is that it would be easy for me to say, talk about the program that we're running. Obviously, we think it's a good program. That's why we're running it. And it has scaled up a lot. The same program, like, it started from mobile crashes. Many of us took it to different areas and different sectors and different states. And there's been a lot of movement, and we can talk about that. In many seminars and conferences, that's what we do. But I think the point that I was really trying to make was that more than that, instead of this one program run in this particular way being successful, that's not what sustains actually. What will sustain is process alone. And for that, that's a general principle that could apply to any program. And the process, and that's what makes it so difficult. Exactly this. Our concern is that we want something defined, we want something laid out, we want the protocols, and I have them. That's how I've been working also. All of us work like that. But that's not what's going to make the change if we really want every child now to be nurtured. That's really the point of, and that's why I didn't want to spell it out. There's nothing for us to spell out sitting in this room. That spelling out, however difficult it is, it's difficult for us even for one moment to consider. I don't have a framework ready with me to take. How troubled that makes us feel, how impatient and frustrated it makes us feel that I don't have an answer. We've got to go without answers to the community, please. We have to go to the people, and we have to go without this answer. We have something. As I said, we're not a tabula rasa, we're not going blank. We have something. We have some experience, we have some knowledge. But we have to go without this set framework of a program that we consider good practice right there. It has to be a process that's got to start there. And therefore, because it's starting there, it cannot start here today. And it will be iterative. What we have to learn is the process of this participatory work. And that's not very easy to do. It's very challenging, but that is what's going to be sustainable, because you use the word sustainable. Otherwise, for outcomes, I can give you, I have lots of data. SAM, for example, severe acute malnutrition. In my program, I get 86% reductions in SAM. Is that sustainable? Not without the PLA, without the participatory work. And maybe the outcomes will not be the same, but they will be more solid, more long-term, and eventually they will give me the momentum of demand generation, systems change, and political will, without which this all child now finally when. Otherwise, I will get this 1 to 2% increment every year. How will I not? I will. So I'm refusing to answer your question, if you get what I mean, at the cost of making all of us feel a little uncomfortable. But I'm not going to say this is the program I'm carrying. This is the principle I'm going to carry.
Essentially, you're saying community ownership at all stages,
Whatever
right
costs
from
us.
conception to execution and monitoring. That would bring in the sustainability because they own it. They would like it to continue if it is successful and useful.
Sometimes it'll be wrong. Mistakes will happen. Mistakes will be made, but we'll be with them. We'll be standing there to help.
As Gil Green said, when you want to change society, there can be no insurance against mistakes. But if you do nothing to change society when it's needed, you don't commit a mistake, you commit a crime. So we are closing now. We will carry on the conversation now later on. We do have Ms. Sumitra Mishra coming in, summarizing this evening's key points and also proposing the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Vandana, and thank you, Dr. Reddy. After a very, very thought-provoking evening, there is, I will fail in words to summarize the intent that you tried to bring across, Vandana, through your words. But let me start by reminding all of us once again of Anita Kaul. Year after year, in the month of October, for now the 9th year, many of us have assembled every year to remember Anita with fondness, with love in our hearts. And each time we hear about her, the high respect, the deep regard for who Anita was is reminded and rekindled in all of us. Mohan, you did a fabulous job of again bringing to life the person Anita was. And I think we can all say, and I'll say this briefly, that with the power and the politics dichotomy that we are trying to bridge here, probably Anita was that person who was in a place of power, and she, in her own revolutionary way within an administration, was bridging the dichotomy between the power and the politics to make people have the highest power, and people's voice ring and sing within the administrative system, because she had people in our hearts. And I think that's what, Vandana, you're also trying to say. It's the people. It's really the people. Anita believed in the people, and that's how she used her power and her position. So that's a clarion call from Anita to Vandana and many more, as you said, many more not gray haired people coming on and believing in this intent also. But very briefly, Vandana, thank you for sharing about your grandchild also, and for reminding all of us that really the child is the whole, and the child is a reflection of everything, that the child is reflecting of the environment and the world around the child. And it is the world around the child, and the child being the whole child is also what makes it complex, because it's multidimensional, big words. It's also the complexity of the multidimensional is what makes the marginalization become more acute. And therefore, to see the child through multiple lens, and each one of us bringing so many different lenses, and each lens is a lens of truth. But it's when the truths converge that we really see the truthfulness of the child. So thank you again for reminding us about that. And there is of course, I mean, trust Vandana to provoke, right? So so how can Vandana not be a keynote speaker and not have provocations from the floor? So you're doing your job, Vandana, here. So there is enough provocation about the power, the politics, and the profit that you brought in. But you also reminded us that it's the people, and the people who hold the power, and shifting the power to the people is where the political agency shifts. And when you shift the political agency, then people decide what profit means for them. What do they want to see as profit? I will stop here because I really don't want to go into many more notes that I have taken. Vandana, you remain inspirational. You remind us of hard truths. And Dr. Reddy, thank you for your voice of reason and your experience. And now that we've got your attention and we've got Vandana sitting next to you, we know now that, Dr. Reddy, you will remember to bring up the youngest child and the caring for the child within a medico-legal dimension, within the medical dichotomy also, that it's the nurturing care that matters, and care is also the means for the health and nutrition for the child. And we will look at you as a champion for caring children leading to caring societies. Thank you so much, Dr. Reddy, for being that champion for us. As a token of gratitude from all of us, starting with the Kaul and the Kriplani family, may I request Wilson to please come forward. Wilson is the president of a Dalit movement in India. May I request my members from the governing council and the general body of mobile creches, Kali, you are shy and hiding, and Anjali, please, as a long time friend supporter of mobile creches, but long time friend supporters of Sanjay and the entire family, and of Vandana and of Vandana. So who better than the two of you here? And Wilson, please, as a small token of our appreciation, Zaid, can you please come forward? So please come forward. Please come forward. And if I may request Ali and Wilson and Ashik also hand over a small appreciation to Dr. Reddy, and then we can.
Wilson also represents Rainbow Homes.
You're obviously terrible at this. I don't understand. Please get a light.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you all once again. And one final word of gratitude to Sanjay, Rohan, Divya, and the entire Call and Kriplani family for doing this so religiously for all of us. An evening well spent. Thank you all for joining. And all those who've joined online, you missed the electric energy in this room provocated by Vandana, but I'm sure her words transmitted that power to all of you. For all children, today and forever. Thank you, Vandana. Zindabad.